An officer stormed into the precinct, his boots echoing sharply against the tiled floor. Officer Nathan Wallace's face was flushed with anger, and his fists clenched tightly at his sides. The bustling activity in the Brookhaven Police Department slowed as curious glances darted toward him. He had just come from an encounter that had rattled him to his core, a moment that burned hot with humiliation and frustration. Without a word, he marched straight into the office of Sergeant Laura Alvarez, slamming the door shut behind him. Inside, Sergeant Alvarez looked up from her desk, her sharp brown eyes narrowing at the abrupt intrusion. "Wallace," she said evenly, setting down the paperwork she'd been reviewing. "To what do I owe this dramatic entrance?" Nathan's breath came in sharp bursts as he fought to maintain control of his voice. "That woman," he hissed, "had the audacity to sit in my chair, in my office." Alvarez raised an eyebrow, her expression calm but tinged with curiosity. "What woman?" Nathan pointed toward the hallway with a trembling hand. "The one in civilian clothes, older, black. She just walked in like she owned the place." Alvarez's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "You mean Renee Jackson?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "I don't care what her name is. She needs to learn some respect." "She's your new captain," Alvarez interrupted, her voice as sharp as a blade. The words cut through Nathan's anger like ice water, leaving him momentarily stunned. "What?" he managed to choke out, his face paling. "You heard me," Alvarez said, her tone firm. "Captain Renee Jackson. She officially starts today, but she's been overseeing things in the background for weeks. And let me tell you, Wallace, she's someone you should tread carefully with." Nathan's mind raced, replaying the encounter in his head. He'd slapped her, a quick, impulsive action fueled by prejudice and frustration. His career flashed before his eyes, the weight of his actions sinking into his chest like a stone. "Sergeant," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't know, I thought." "You thought she was someone you could treat without respect," Alvarez finished, her gaze unyielding. "I suggest you go to her office and fix this, now." Nathan nodded numbly and turned toward the door, his steps heavy with dread. The weight of what he'd done bore down on him with every step he took toward the office, marked with the name Captain Renee Jackson. When he reached the door, he hesitated, his hand hovering over the handle. Taking a deep breath, he opened it and stepped inside. Renee Jackson sat behind the desk, her posture regal and commanding despite the casual navy blouse she wore. Her silver-streaked curls framed a face that was calm but held an undeniable edge of authority. She looked up as Nathan entered, her gaze piercing through him. "Officer Wallace," she said, her voice steady and measured. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Nathan swallowed hard. "Captain Jackson, I need to apologize." Renee set down the pen she'd been holding and folded her hands on the desk. "For what exactly?" Nathan's throat felt dry, but he forced the words out. "For how I treated you earlier. I didn't know who you were." Renee's eyes narrowed. "And if I weren't your captain, would that make your actions acceptable?" Nathan flinched at the question. "No, ma'am, it wouldn't." Renee studied him for a long moment, the silence in the room thick with tension. Then, she rose from her chair and walked around the desk, standing just a few feet away from him. "Officer Wallace," she began, her tone cold but controlled, "you assaulted me in front of our colleagues. You judged me based solely on my appearance, and you acted in a way that is unbecoming of any officer who wears this badge." Nathan's head hung low, shame burning his cheeks. "I know, ma'am, I was wrong." Renee's voice softened slightly, but her words still carried weight. "The community we serve in Brookhaven doesn't need officers who act on impulse or prejudice. They need officers who listen, who understand, and who respect everyone, regardless of who they are. Do you understand that?" "Yes, ma'am," Nathan replied, his voice barely audible. Renee stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "You've embarrassed yourself, this department, and me. But I believe in second chances. I'm giving you two options. You can resign effective immediately, or you can take a transfer to the Brookhaven East Division for 1 year. That precinct serves one of the most diverse areas in this city. Consider it an opportunity to learn." Nathan looked up, his heart pounding. "I'll take the transfer, ma'am. I'll prove that I can do better." Renee nodded curtly. "You'll report to Captain Mark Rise tomorrow morning. Dismissed." Nathan left the office, feeling as though the weight of the world had been placed on his shoulders. The next day, he arrived at the Brookhaven East Precinct, a smaller and less modern building than the central station he was used to. The neighborhood was bustling with activity, children playing on sidewalks, street vendors selling their goods, and families chatting on porches. It was a stark contrast to the quiet suburbs he'd patrolled before. Inside, he was introduced to his new partner, Officer Jason Cooper, a tall, easygoing man who seemed to know everyone in the neighborhood. "Welcome to Brookhaven East," Jason said with a grin. "Ready to hit the streets?" Nathan nodded, though he felt far from ready. Their first patrol took them through the heart of the district. Jason greeted residents by name, exchanging friendly banter and checking in on local businesses. Nathan, on the other hand, felt like an outsider, his discomfort growing with each interaction. At a small park, they encountered a group of teenagers playing basketball. Jason stopped the car and stepped out, calling out to the kids. "Hey Malik, how's that jump shot coming along?" One of the boys laughed and tossed the ball to Jason, who effortlessly sank a shot. The kids cheered, and Jason handed the ball back with a smile. Nathan watched from the sidelines, feeling out of place. As the days turned into weeks, Nathan began to observe the tight-knit fabric of the community. He saw the way neighbors looked out for each other, how they rallied together during tough times. Slowly, his interactions became less awkward, and he started to understand the importance of building relationships. One evening, while on patrol, Nathan and Jason responded to a call about a disturbance at a local community center. When they arrived, they found a heated argument between two parents over a youth sports game. Nathan's initial instinct was to intervene with authority, but Jason held him back. "Let's hear them out first," Jason said calmly. Following his partner's lead, Nathan listened as the parents aired their grievances. With Jason mediating, they were able to reach a resolution without escalating the situation. It was a small moment, but it left a lasting impression on Nathan. Over the next few months, Nathan began to shed his prejudices and embrace his role in the community. He volunteered at local events, mentored at-risk youth, and even helped organize a basketball tournament to bring the neighborhood together. Slowly but surely, he earned the trust of the residents. When his year at Brookhaven East came to an end, Nathan returned to the central precinct, a changed man. He walked into Captain Renee Jackson's office, standing tall as he spoke. "Captain Jackson, thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's been humbling, and I've learned more than I ever thought possible." Renee studied him for a moment before nodding. "Welcome back, Wallace. Let's see what you've got." Nathan's journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt ready to face the challenges ahead with integrity and respect. The lessons he'd learned in Brookhaven East had not only shaped him as a better officer, but as a better man.